Yo, what's up, everybody? It is the Ant-Man channel. Thank you for joining me today. It is Monday, the 6th of October, 2014, and I tend to be your host. It's never been anyone else. Anyways, I got an article in front of me from thechristianpost.com, and we got right here, and this came in on October 2nd, but I've had it here. I wanted to read it. I think that this has been a big issue lately, or maybe I'm just barely getting to the, you know what I mean, the issue. I don't know. But I've only been a Christian for 2.5 years. I haven't been, aware of this type of thing going on in the church, and I didn't even know this kind of stuff did go on. And you know what I mean? It's just these type of things, just so that you know, are something that we do talk about. My channel's for Christians, my brothers and sisters. They know what I'm talking about. They understand the issues that. We bring up controversial things, and we want to discuss them through because the Apostle Paul, or not the Apostle Paul, the Apostle John told us to test the spirits. We're not just supposed to follow people blindly. The blind lead the blind, and they both go into a pit, right? So we test the spirits. We watch with our spiritual eyes to see whether we're in the, getting the right counseling, getting the right, going in the right direction, all the same stuff. The title of this article is 14 Symptoms of Toxic Church Leaders, and it's by Thom S. Rainer. Most church leaders are godly and healthy. A toxic church leader, one that is figuratively poisonous to the organization, is rare. But it is that church leader who brings great harm to churches and other Christian organizations. And it is that leader that hurts the entire cause of Christ when word travels about such toxicity. In my previous post, I noted the traits of long-term healthy pastors. I now travel to the opposite extreme and provide symptoms of the worst kind of church leaders, toxic church leaders. I think what we fail to read in the Bible these days is that the Bible tells us don't be so quick to think you're a leader, to think that you can preach. You will be held at a higher level of accountability in the day when you are standing in front of the Lord, because if you want to be a pastor, you want to be a Christ figure. You want to be someone who is a shepherd, someone who feeds his flock. And Jesus Christ takes that very seriously. If you're not taking the truth seriously, if you're not taking doctrine seriously, if you're not taking theology seriously, then you don't have any right to be a pastor. And you know what? The weighty things of being a Christian aren't even that weighty. All God asks you to do is to love knowledge. He says that in all of your, he says that his prayer, his one prayer is that our love abounds more and more in knowledge and in depth of insight, meaning that he wants us to get wise. He wants us to know. The meaning of wisdom is to see your circumstances and your obstacles from a higher perspective. When you don't have wisdom, you live in fear and you make bad decisions. Sin is folly. Sin causes you to make dumb decisions and mistakes, and we've all been there. But wisdom helps you to make good decisions, to make godly decisions, to see, to distinguish what's right and what's wrong. And the high road, of course, is never the easy road, but it is the best road to go down. And I see pastors nowadays that they attach the whole church thing to an emotional, experiential thing. Like, if you come to church, we're going to have video games and everybody's nice, and that gets you to go to church. But that is not what the church is for. The church is so that we can lead people to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. Nothing can bring peace and joy to your heart more than that knowledge. Not going to church to play video games, not going to church to be jumping over the pulpit, on a motorcycle. It's not for that. And we do have these postmodern false converts these days that are leading people. And it sucks because I know people like that. I know people who call themselves pastors and they go out and they are so shallow. They're shallow. Like, they're so worldly and materialistic, and they're not spiritual. They're like, if anything, they don't like to be spiritual because it's like weird. You know what I mean? Like, people get all weird when you talk spiritual. But we don't care. The Christian is like, we're kind of used to that already. So we don't... there should be a joy in sharing our faith and sharing in the supernatural work of the Spirit. We shouldn't feel as if it's a weird thing to talk about spirituality. It's not a weird thing. But in our culture nowadays that pretends it's not spiritual but has adopted a spirituality that is multicultural Eastern philosophy type of spirituality. Why do you think yoga is so big in our day? Because the yuppies want you to empty your mind, and you don't believe in spirits, but they will influence you. There are different types of meditations and prayers. When you look into yoga, you see that it has roots in a religion, a Middle Eastern religion, and meditating in yoga is a spiritual thing. You are channeling evil spirits. You don't believe me, but go look at some of the yogis, some of the guys that are like top yogis, how they look. They look like their eyes are empty. They have gigantic beards and dreadlocks, and they're just off. And I don't mean to be jerk about that, but I'm just saying, like, they are channeling, they're emptying their mind and filling it with nothing. You know what I mean? It's just that is a spirituality. That is a spiritual practice, and it's better to pray to God. When you pray to God, you get a better perspective and you get a better spirit about you, because sometimes when we go to our knees, we're in need, most of the time. But when we get off our knees, we feel the weight of all of the worries and stuff like that lifted off of our shoulders, and we know that the Lord is going to provide, He's going to protect us, He's going to encourage us in the Spirit to quicken us and stir us up for whatever it is that we're, that whatever He's put on our mind and on our heart for the day. And why did I get into that? Because, there is a spiritual practice to being a Christian. The spiritual practice is to read the Bible and to pray. If you don't do that, I don't know I don't know if you really are committed to the Lord, but that's what you do. And the toxic church leaders today don't teach you that. They're shallow. And I don't know how to really describe that, but that's the best way I can really put it, is that they seem very shallow in their understanding of God's holiness and what sin is and all that. So there's a list of things here that are gonna describe these toxic church leaders. Number 1, they rarely demonstrate the fruit of the Spirit. Oh, that is a good point. Paul notes those specific attributes in Galatians 5:22 through 23. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faith, gentleness, and self-control. You won't see them much in toxic leaders. You know how I look at the fruit of the Spirit is that we don't produce it in and of ourselves. I always remember that one scripture where it says that we're grafted in. Well, I'm a Gentile. I don't know if you're a Jew and then you converted to Christianity, but I'm a Gentile. I'm from America. I'm not Jewish. I'm not Hebrew. I'm a Gentile, but I was grafted in with the true vine being Jesus Christ. If you abide in Him, if you are in Him, if you are walking in the light, I believe that He cleanses you of all unrighteousness when you are in fellowship with Him. And you're also going to bear fruit for the fact that you are in Him. So I think that when you're attached to the true vine is producing the fruit through you. I never would give myself credit for anything good I'm doing. I just think it's God doing it through me, because I know that, you guys got to be honest with yourself, man. If you're a Christian, we're not good in and of ourselves. We have to learn this from God. And I know you guys, especially atheists, you guys get really angry when people tell you that you're not a good person. But what standard are you living your life comparing what good is anyway? What standard are you comparing yourself to? Because if you're good, like, compared to Hitler, then that's, okay, like, that's not good enough, As a matter of fact, God actually expects you to be perfect if you want to go to heaven, but that's the story of the gospel. That's the beauty of the gospel. That's when it comes in, and you can't appreciate the good news unless you hear the bad news. But we have so many yuppie pastors nowadays that they don't tell you the bad news because they're afraid to offend you, and they're all politically correct. And I think that this corruption comes from the top. It comes from the top, and I think that people from the top of the ministry are telling all the other pastors to do that, and they're listening because they think that it's like, they have these ideas in their head, like, oh yeah, we can't do that these days, we got to be relevant with the culture, we got to be no, it doesn't work that way. The gospel's going to stay the same whether we're in the 1st century or whether we're in the 21st century. So that's a good point right there. They don't produce fruit of the Spirit. They're very shallow, like I said. 2, they seek a minimalist structure of accountability. Indeed, if they could get away with it, they would operate in a totally autocratic fashion with heavy top-down leadership. I've never really worked in a ministry to be a pastor or a speaker or anything. So I wouldn't know what it's like on the inside, but just to let you know from what I have done, from being a worship leader, is that you do see, like, in the ministry, people who are not following Jesus Christ wholeheartedly, and you got to be patient and gentle with these type of people. But when you see the pastor not even practicing what he preaches, when you see the pastor not even aware of what he believes, it is just it's time to go. It's time to move on for me, because you're under this leadership where you're not allowed to correct them. You're looked down at, like, as if you're the, like, you're the one that needs to be taught. And it's kind of like, no, yeah, I understand you're the assistant pastor or whatever, but you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's kind of a shameful thing to let somebody know more than you when you're a pastor. You're supposed to take that job seriously. There isn't a more serious job to do in the world than be a pastor. You gotta dive into some books, man. You gotta read a lot. And I don't, you know what I mean? And that's the accountability there. So anyway, number 3, they expect behavior of others they don't expect of themselves. Do as I say, not as I do. Wow. I'm glad I haven't seen that one. 4, they see almost everyone else as inferior to themselves. Yes, I do get that feeling sometimes. You will hear them criticizing other leaders while building themselves up. Yes, I've actually seen that. You know what, man? I don't really enjoy talking about stuff that I've seen other people do and stuff, but I think that it serves as a good or bad example for that. Yes, I've been to panels where the senior pastor was on a panel, and there was a mediator. There was somebody that was, asking him questions, and there was, I went to one of these things that, the Assemblies of God put together, and they were asking him questions about how to run church and how church works. Some of those people up there were on fire. Some of them were kind of like, you could tell, they don't like to talk about spiritual stuff. And one of them was just like, he literally said, I heard a voice when I was driving. And I was like, okay, that's weird. When I hear people say that they hear, like, God actually talk to them in an audible voice, I have to, like, kind of sit back and go, okay, wait a minute here, dude. So God talks to you with an audible voice, you know what I mean? Like, for me, I don't know, man. God can do anything, but I don't think that that's necessary. Like, it's almost unbiblical, because the Bible clearly says that there are no more things to be fulfilled. It's all been already done. And so we don't have, like, the whole Bible was written already and it's done. We don't have more scripture being written today. So it just kind of makes me feel weird. And they were criticizing him on the way back, the guys that I was with, and they were saying, like, I just wanted him to shut up and this and that. It's just kind of like, it's unruly. It's not the kind of conduct you expect from a pastor, to be gossiping and talking down about another pastor. I think it was a little bit of a turnoff. It was a little bit of a disappointment for me. I was like, for the most part, you don't ever say anything. That guy might sound like a total nut job, but I never hear you talk about anything. So I don't see why you think it's so, like, you're so, like, I don't know, you're up on your high horse talking about other people, but and I do that all day long. But I mean, I don't pretend to be cool with you in real life and then turn my back around and then say that guy's weak, da 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 da. No, I don't do that. You know what I mean? And when I see that, especially with Christians, it's like, that's immaturity, man. That's hardcore immaturity. And I don't, a Christian should shun that. We should really shun that kind of stuff. That's too worldly for us to be allowing that kind of stuff to dwell among us, because that's evil. You need to get that away. It's not good to gossip about people. Would you like people gossiping about you? What I realize about people who gossip is that if somebody's gossiping about somebody to you, they're most likely gossiping about you when you're not around. And that's how it is, man. Straight up. So you got a lot of people who are traitors these days, everywhere. 4, they see almost everyone as inferior to themselves. I just read that. Number 5, they show favoritism. It is clear that they have a favored few while they marginalize the rest. That's true. That is true. 6, they have frequent anger outbursts. This behavior takes place when they don't get their way. That's true. I've seen that. 7, they see one thing to some people, but different things to others. This is a soft way of saying they lie. 8, they seek to dismiss or marginalize people before they attempt to develop them. People are means to their ends. They see them as projects, not God's people who need mentoring and developing. I think that this is one of the key points in all of the church these days, is that in the first century, when we read in the book of Acts, which is like the postmodern's favorite book ever, because they pull out all kinds of weird doctrines out of that book. But what we see in the book of Acts is that Luke records it as they were of one accord. The church was of one mind and one spirit, and they were of one, like, they were all meeting each other's needs. And you hear the atheists say that, oh, you see, Christians are communist because they're everything that they have, they weren't being forced to do that. They weren't starting a government, you guys. They were doing that out of love for one another. They were putting in everything they owed, expecting everyone to do the same, so that nobody lacks anything, so that if you need something, everybody will meet that need. That is what the church is for. But what we got in the end times is that people are lovers of money. And people look at a church as a business, and they want to make it full and big, and make it a big whoop-de-doo center so that everybody can be impressed by it. But they're not really engaged. They're not really investing in developing people spiritually. They're just kind of using you as somebody to bring to church and tithe and whatnot. And it's true, man. It is true. The church doesn't meet your needs. They don't really care if you're around or not. And it's really like, we all need to do our part, and wanting to seek to be a part of someone else's life, to want to encourage them daily to pursue after whatever God's putting on our hearts, because that's what the church isn't doing today. We aren't engaged enough in our own faith, in our own communities, in our own family, because the world seems to have all of the attention from all the Christians these days. We all want to be fitting into the world and getting along with, and that's not biblical. I wasn't a Christian all my life, and I have friends that aren't Christian, and I understand that we need to, what business does, what deal does Christ have with Baal, and what, you know what I mean? And but the thing is that if you love your friends, man, you reach out to them, and you don't marginalize or treat them worse because they're sinners. We were once sinners too. Remember that. So let's see. They seek 9. They are manipulative. Their most common tactic is using partial truths to get their way. Yeah. 10. They lack transparency. Autocratic leaders are rarely transparent. If they get caught abusing their power, they may have to forfeit it. 11. They do not allow for pushback or disagreement. When someone does disagree, he or she becomes the victim of the leader's anger and marginalization. Yeah. Yeah, and you will see a lot of the postmodern mindset in the church nowadays because of the younger guys, the younger kids, the younger gals. They come into church, and they're kind of they're used to going to public school, right? So they're being kind of infused with this postmodern mindset of whatever you believe is cool for you, bro, and that's good for you. And I'm not a bad person. I don't think I'm bad. Well, you know what? If you don't think you're bad and you don't need to be saved and you don't need to repent, then guess what? You're not really a Christian. God did not reveal Christ to you yet. And I would be doing some serious seeking if I talked like that. And I've heard people talk like that in a little group, session when I was at church, and I was the only one to stand up and say anything and say, you know what? No, the Bible, man, you don't live up to the law. And you know what? I'm not going to let someone come to church, and I'm not going to pass up a moment to witness to someone while they're at church. That's like the biggest disappointment ever. If you're going to church and you never hear the gospel, that's sad right there. That's our job, you guys. We need to tell people that the law is the requirement to get into heaven. Are you good enough to get to heaven? No, you're not. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Gandhi, Mother Teresa. I don't care if you're, who else was a virtuous, godly person? I don't know. But it doesn't matter, you know what I mean? Nobody does. Nobody lives up to that moral perfection of the essence of the law. So it's self-righteousness and pride and wanting to, I don't know. It has a lot to do with you. And the reprobate, hypocritical mind doesn't understand that everybody can see them. They're naked to me. I'm not falling for all the things that they put up in front of them to try to fool people to think who they are is who they are and all that. The law exposes everybody. It makes and if you want to live as if you don't need a savior, you're exposed to people who do know God, because they look at you like you're lost and you need God, and we need to be gentle with them and patient, because the sinner has a, you know what I mean? We all needed saving, and we all had that brokenness, and you need to be gentle with that. But because if it's one thing that you don't want to do as a Christian is you don't want to turn people off with your faith to Christ. You don't want to be a snob and know-it-all. You got to be tactful. If you want to make a point, but don't make an enemy. So, 11, I already read that. Number 12, they surround themselves with sociophants, or psychophants. Their inner circle thus often includes close friends and family members as well as a host of yes people. That's true. 13, they communicate poorly. In essence, any clarity of communication would reveal their autocratic behavior. So they keep their communications unintelligible and obtuse. Yeah, and I guarantee you guys know a couple of people who, instead of ever saying anything real, they just crack jokes all the time. And they're just all about yucks. That's what happens when you treat church as it's just part of the program. I go to church on Sunday and it's just part of the schedule. That's what happens to you when you treat church like that. Is that you get complacent in your growth in Christ, and you're not really going to church for the right reasons. You're kind of just going to impress everybody and to show off your family, and it's really like that's what I see sometimes, and it's really like you should come to church for the right reasons. You shouldn't come to just be like cool and try to impress your family members because they go to church or something. It shouldn't ever be for something like that. It should be out of a soul. It should be from the heart that you want to seek after God. It should never be because you're trying to impress others or anything like that, or because you have a title and all that, and you gotta be there or whatever. It's just, I don't know why anybody would want to be religious. If I didn't know Christ, I wouldn't want to be going to church and stuff. That's like, I have to deal with enough stuff, all right? 14, they are self-absorbed. In fact, they would unlikely see themselves in any of these symptoms. Yes, toxic leaders are the distinct minority of church leaders. But they can do harm to the cause of Christ disproportionate to their numbers, and they can get away with their behavior for years because they often have a charismatic and charming personality, charming like a snake. That's very true, man. Church, we need to address these issues these days. Know that even though I bring up these things, and we know as Christians we judge all things, we judge all things according to the will of God, and we do it unhypocritically. But these are serious issues. Do you care for the lost? Do you care that the lost are not getting the gospel? Because people are massaging their egos because they think they're pastors and they're a bunch of weirdos. They are weirdos, though. Who wants to be a religious person or a pastor if you don't really have a heart for the lost and for what Christ has commissioned us with the Great Commission to go out into the world and to preach the gospel to every living creature? I don't know why would you want to be religious, but if I was a pastor, which I won't ever be, because that's not my calling, I would take it so serious that my entire life all my selfish ambition would be put aside. I would not be trying to be, an MMA fighter. And it's funny that you do see a lot of that stuff nowadays. Like, there are MMA fighting churches. And I don't care about that, man. If you want to be a fighter, pastor, Christian, go ahead, dude. I don't have anything bad to say about that. But I would put everything behind me to seek after being as good as a leader as I can. When you look at the Bible, the greatest leaders like Ezra, Joshua, these guys were great and effective because they put their time into studying the law. Now, we neglect that nowadays, so now that's what you see is shallow, materialistic, yuppie pastors, and that's sad. We need to speak our minds, Christians. And with that, I say God bless you, subscribe, and have a good day.